Hi, this is Exy, and this is a reply to Galathonredds, hope I said that right, and this video, one question all educated atheists must answer. I've had a couple of goes at this, I can't get it below 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to rush through some of this. To start off, I'm saying I don't know anything about childbearing, so I'm going to ignore that bit. Ghosts, I personally don't believe in, just because on TV I don't really go with that. But I apologise for short answers, but I've got to rush on. Science is incomplete, completely agree with you. I don't think science is ever going to be complete, partly because science drives technology, and we're always going to be developing new technology and new areas of science. Science answers some questions, and in those answers, sometimes you open whole new fields of science that you never thought about before. Also, you can look at building blocks of life. You can break down an atom into protons and neutrons, those into quarks and leptons, those into superstrings. That linking back to M theory. It can keep going. I don't think we're going to find an end to that. I think it's going to keep expanding. Even if it doesn't, loads of other avenues to explore, such as why is any of that actually there? Why is it those things? Also, medicine. There's always going to be new diseases, mutations, need for better cures and procedures, techniques. So science is always going to be there. Proof of God. I don't think you can prove God with science, partly because God is fundamentally unprovable. To have a good hypothesis for science, you need to have one that is falsifiable, as in you can prove it's false. You can't prove that God is false, because I'm going to use a Christian analogy here. I'm going to come at this later, but basically pretty much all religious videos on YouTube are Christian, so that's the angle I'm coming from. Say that God is outside the universe, outside time and space, that he created it, but he's outside it. He doesn't exist within the world that we perceive. So, given that he's fundamentally undetectable, as he's not part of our universe, or that there's no detectable part of him within our universe, that you can't detect him, you can't prove he's not there either, because you can't prove something isn't there. The famous example, the chocolate teapot orbiting Jupiter. I could say there's a chocolate teapot orbiting Jupiter, and you couldn't prove me wrong. You could go to Jupiter, you could look round it, go, oh, no teapot. I could say it's in a wider orbit, it's orbiting in a diameter the size of the solar system. You can't prove me wrong. I can keep saying it's wider, it's a different angle. You're never going to be able to prove that there isn't a chocolate teapot orbiting Jupiter, and that's quite an easy one. When you talk about there isn't a God in the universe, massive problem, because it's fundamentally impossible to detect God. Also, you'd have to look behind every electron in the universe simultaneously before you could conclusively say he's not there, and even then you could not be behind the electrons. Gravity, there's a nice physics site with the equations on, I'll link it up there. Basically the force of gravity is 300 times stronger than the force of centrifugal force even, so that's why we stay on. Force of gravity is pretty much constant. The centrifugal force is going to be stronger around the equator, as it's further from the axis of rotation. So a lot of rocket launch pads are around the equator, Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, French Guiana, simply because of that. Human brain. Okay, I think what you're looking for is the soul. You're talking about consciousness and the id and the superego and ego, which are kind of concepts. They're philosophical ideas about the mind rather than actual quantifiable physical things that are there. Everyone's brain is kind of wired differently, almost like a fingerprint. It all develops in the first early years of life, where you're working out how everything works, trying to get to grips with your own body, and your brain's making connections and working out the world you live in, and how to interact with people. So that is very individualistic. Think of it like a house where all the rooms are set, you know where they all are. But you move different people in, and they're going to put the TV somewhere, they're going to put a bookcase somewhere else, bed somewhere else. They might turn the bedroom into an office. So the rooms are there, but how they're wired up is very individual, and that's why it's so hard with some extreme cases of epilepsy to stop seizures. They've put electrodes into people's brain, and when test firing certain electrodes, what they're finding is that, one what makes someone laugh, makes someone feel sad, make them feel like they're falling or smelling bacon. You could have a multitude of different experiences all from these different electrodes, and because the makeup is unique, it's not always definite. You can't always tell exactly where everything is. So that's where you can't get a definite answer to where the emotion and the other parts are. It is there, you can stimulate them, but they're not always in the same place, so you can't really tie it down. Okay, so Onyx, you mentioned psychics working with the police. I think if you look at any websites apart from those belonging to the psychics in question, you will not find evidence of them working with the police. If you can find, ideally somewhere non-paranormal, that would say the psychics are working with the police and they got a good result, then please let me know. Send me a link or something, or reply. But I think a lot of the time you find that psychics will say they work with the police and they got these results. But if you have a look at what the police have said, or if the information they've given to the police has been erroneous or good, send an email to the police. Ask them what they say. If they've got any, if you say, I've heard about this psychic, been involved in this investigation, could you tell me what happened? I think most of the time you're going to find that the psychics either weren't involved at all or gave erroneous information. But by all means, if you find something, send it back to me. Let me check it out. Okay, I think if you look at the JREF page, I'll link you to as well. It's a skeptic website, and they investigate paranormal claims. There's a $1 million prize for anyone who can exhibit any paranormal ability at all. So no one's ever claimed it in about 2 decades, but they do things. They did a Project Alpha, where James Randi, the guy who runs it, put together 2 magicians. He trained them up, and they went to Washington University to try and fool the paranormal investigators there. And for 4 years they got away with it, convincing they could bend metal with their mind. And after 4 years they said, yep, it's all a wind up, this is how we did it. And the scientists never published anything again. So psychic, if you set up a strong scientific test where you control all the variables and you make sure that it's a blind study where they don't know the results until afterwards, so that you can't kind of check on yourself as you're going. A lot of the times they fail. He's got a load of results on the website. Have a look there. But no one's passed the preliminary test yet, and they have to agree on the test. It's not just him saying a test and saying, "Ha, you can't do it." They agree with the participant beforehand. So, I personally don't believe in psychics, but there's a lot of information there and testing that's worth checking out. Okay, criticism of evolution. I think we are quite incredible. I agree with you, we're not perfect at all, but we've had a couple of billion years to get here from first signs of life. So to get from there to where we are in these tiny incremental steps, it's been a long slog to get here, but in a couple of billion years, that's a hell of a long time, even in incremental steps, and it's constant improvement all the way. Evolution doesn't go downhill, so I don't think it's impossible to think that we got here after a couple of billion years of little stages. To say that a human would evolve from the beginning, I think is a stretch, but just improvements up to the point to where we are now, yes, it might not have been us, it might be something else, but we're here. Your question at last, I've got a minute left. Christians wrong, no God. Okay, I agree with you that proving Christianity is wrong does not prove there is no God. I think atheists who go after Christians are going after them for reasons other than atheism. I think for an atheist it is a question of there is no evidence for God, there is no necessity for God. Now we have theories of the Big Bang and evolution, abiogenesis. There's not a necessity for God to be there. All these things can happen by natural processes, and it's not necessary. I think that's the main reason, but the reason to believe evidence rather than ancient texts. Okay, that's my time, but get back to me with any other things you have. I'd love to hear from you. I hope that's answered some of your questions. I'm Nick Knox, Fields. Cheers.